door and I'll close it, so we don't get the noise, and if anybody wants to come in, they can actually knock. All right, our Night of the Living Dead panel, we have a guest art editor who's going to help out on this one. And would you like to introduce everyone?
Sure, so this is the 50th anniversary of the shooting of Night of the Living Dead, a momentous occasion. Each of you please introduce yourselves, not that we don't know who you are, but you can introduce yourselves and say what you did on the film.
You want the pretty ones to go first?
You're all pretty.
My name's Kyra Schon, and I played Karen Cooper, the little kid in the basement.
I am Judith O'Dea. I played Barbra.
And I am Barbara's annoying brother, John. I also was one of the producers on the film, along with Kyra's father, Hardman.
Russ, do you want to talk a little bit about the production company and what led up to Night of the Living Dead, since you were involved with this group of people for some time prior to it?
Well, very briefly, George Romero and I had a film production company in Pittsburgh that started in 1963. So about 4 or 5 years before we made Night of the Living Dead. Kyra's father, Carl Hardman, had a company called Hardman and Associates, and they did audio production. And Judith O'Dea did work for Carl. They did business events, that sort of thing. So we teamed up with them. Our company was called The Latent Image. Carl's company was called Hardman and Associates. And there were 10 of us who were the original investors in Image 10, and that's where the 10 comes from. But we teamed up with Carl Hardman and some of his associates, George and myself and John Russo, to get together to make what we called a real movie. Well, it turned out that it was a pretty darn good real movie. What the distinction was, prior to that time, we were doing TV commercials, business films, industrial films, that kind of thing. But we always had the ambition to make a real movie, and that real movie was Night of the Living Dead.
Now, Kyra, you were not originally cast in the film. The idea was, in the script at least, it was to be a little boy in the basement. How did you come to be in the film?
Nepotism. Hey, if it's good enough for our government, it's good enough.
And she didn't want to have a sex change.
The part was originally written to be a little boy named Timmy. And I don't know if it was because there were no boys around that age. Marilyn had sons, my age roughly, so I don't know really why. But I ended up as the kid, and they changed Timmy to Karen. And I'm very, very lucky and very happy that I got to be a part of this amazing film. I mean, really, it is not hyperbole to say that this film has done so much for me. So I thank you, Russ, too, as one of the producers, for allowing me a part in it, because it's changed so much of my life for the better, in unfathomable ways, really.
And if I may say, even to this day, at least for me, the scene with Karen killing her mother with the trowel is as devastating, as disturbing now in 2017 as it was back then. Truly an iconic scene.
That's completely true. We always like to find out how many people, is there anyone here who has not seen Night of the Living Dead? No hands go up.
Don't put your hands up.
As Judith said, that scene, the scene in the basement with Karen Cooper turning on her parents is as turning on her mother is as noteworthy in terms of what Night of the Living Dead has become in terms of a cultural phenomenon as any other scene in the movie. So thank you very much.
I know we just keep going from one to the next, but I believe a fan came up at one point in one of our wonderful conventions. Now, either he shared or you shared that Steven Spielberg was asked what film was influential or what films were influential. And he mentioned Night and that scene.
For anyone who doesn't know, next year, 2018, is the official anniversary of Night of the Living Dead. And to celebrate that occasion, thanks to the Museum of Modern Art and Martin Scorsese's Film Foundation, there is a brand new restoration of Night of the Living Dead, both the picture and the sound. And you will be able now to see Night of the Living Dead. I have to say, it looks like Night of the Living Dead has never looked before. It was the way the film was originally intended to look. So look out next year for Night of the Living Dead, the 50th anniversary, and I guarantee you, you will not be disappointed.
The film festival, the Montclair Film Festival,
Absolutely.
next weekend.
Yeah.
Next Saturday night, we'll be
Yeah.
screening the 4K restoration, so.
So anyone who can get to Montclair, New Jersey, you get a sneak preview next week.
Will this be out on Blu-ray at some point following?
It will be. All of that is in the works right now, along with some very special 50th anniversary surprises.
It'll be a box set of surprises. It's been so long.
It has been long, and we can't talk about it too much right now because the deal isn't exactly signed yet. It looks very promising, and again, I promise you, you will not be disappointed.
So, one of the most incredible aspects of Night of the Living Dead is Dwayne Jones and his performance. How did Dwayne Jones come to be cast in the film?
He was the best actor who auditioned for the part. The fact that he was African American made absolutely no difference to us. Originally, the character Ben was supposed to have been played by a friend of ours, a fellow by the name of Rudy Ritchie. And once we saw Dwayne's audition, it was hands down, including Rudy Ritchie voted, who was one of the 10 original investors, voted in favor of Dwayne playing the character, and it certainly did work out well.
It changed film history too, besides not only being a great black and white horror film, and et cetera, et cetera. He became one of the first black actors to be a hero, to be afforded a heroic role. So, I mean, the guys did a lot changing history.
But for me, most importantly, was the fact that George did not make any issue of the fact that Dwayne was black. It was a group of people trying to survive. It didn't matter what color you were. And the older I get, the more I appreciate the fact that that was done that way.
One of the things that I have always found interesting is that Kyra's father, Carl Hardman, he gets such a bum rap as Harry Cooper, and he was one of the nicest guys. He was branded as Harry Cooper, and people would come up and say some awful things to Harry Cooper. not knowing that Carl Hardman was a super guy.
Also, Carl and Dwayne were the best of friends off set. You'd find them smoking and reading and talking and laughing together.
He loved that, though. My dad, when he did conventions, he passed away 10 years ago, but he did conventions prior to that, and he loved it when people would come up and say, God, we hate you. He loved that, he lived for it. So, he did appreciate that, what he knew, big character Cooper was. But Cooper was right.
Yeah.
I actually, show producer, Kevin, Mr. Chiller, wanted me to ask you, because he said you mentioned it to him one time, and he wasn't sure if it was true, whether Carl was your father.
Yeah. Yes, Carl was my real father.
So he said, ask you that, and he said, so now it'll be documented. And he said, I'll look at it later. What he said.
Yes, Kevin. Carl Hardman was my real father.
Do you have any on-set stories about working in such close quarters together?
Yes, with no shower stalls. It was awful. The film took it took 30 days to film. And we had to break that into two 15-day production periods because both Hardman Associates and the Late Image had to go back and take care of their commercial customers. So we interrupted the filming of Night of the Living Dead just to take care of business. But the life inside the house when we were filming was very close quarters, and I have to say, everybody did every job that had to be done. There were no role distinctions. The fact that Carl and I were producers meant that we had other tasks to do as well. And everybody, literally everybody that was involved in the production cast or the crew wore many different hats.
Kyra, tell them the story about the bathroom. What we had to do.
She was a minor at the time.
I was exempt, there are labor laws.
We had to carry buckets of water. We'd go down to the stream and pick up a bucket of water in order to flush the toilet upstairs. That's how primitive it was. Cold. It had an incredible atmosphere. It really had a life of its own. It was a character in the movie, the more I look at it. But boy, that was a drag.
It's important to note, ordinarily, when you're making a film and someone wants to use your house to film in, the deal is that you leave on the production company's part, you leave the house in as good a condition as you found it, or better. Well, in the case of Night of the Living Dead, we had an extraordinarily unusual circumstance in that we didn't know, we couldn't tell the fellow who owned the house, Mr. Gass, we didn't know exactly what was going to happen to the house, including maybe catching it on fire. we didn't know going in. So in trying to strike the deal with Mr. Gass, I said, we can't tell you exactly what we're going to do to this house. But the reason there was no plumbing was that the house was basically abandoned. And further, once the filming was finished, he planned to knock the house down anyway. So that's how we got around the whole, we could do anything to the house that we wanted with the owner's permission. And that's why the plumbing wasn't working and that kind of thing.
How long was your break between the two 15-day sessions?
Good question. I recall that it was about 6 to 7 weeks. Yeah, and that's ordinarily, in any production, you try to get a rhythm and an energy going, but in our case, it took it was a 6 to 7 week.
And that wasn't planned?
Well, it was kind of, but when your clients, when your paying customers are beating on your door saying, I don't give a damn what you're doing, I need my TV commercial to be filmed, you gotta make accommodations. One of the big things that happened, the car in the film that Barbara eventually crashes into a tree was my mother's car, a 67 Pontiac LeMans. Now, the very first day of filming was the cemetery scene. Okay, great, get that finished. We did not, with everything that happened in the cemetery and the fight between Bill Heinzman and me and Barbara's escape and that kind of thing, we didn't get finished in one day. So we returned my mother's car to her. She's driving her car back and forth to work. During the period of time when she was driving back and forth to work, someone crashed into her car. So now, okay, we've got a day, our first day of filming with a whole car. George said, tell your mother, ask her to not get it fixed. Because when Barbara releases the handbrake, we have to figure out some way to stop the car. So what we did was, we filmed it in a way to make it look as though Barbara crashed into a tree, but the damage was actually already there. After we filmed her escape, then Russ Streiner was able to get her car fixed.
I love that scene. Yeah.
Did you film chronological order?
Not completely. We did as much chronologically as we could, but sometimes it just didn't work out. But the cemetery scene was indeed the first day of filming.
I always wondered for children acting in movies like this that are kind of scary, was there any sort of, did you have problems sleeping at night or anything like that?
No, I have trouble now, but I didn't then. No, because it wasn't frightening to me. Because you see everything happening, like makeup going on and wounds being created. And that was interesting to me. But none of it was scary. And plus the fact that I was already a very serious horror junkie by the time I was 4 or 5 actually. So. Yeah, I loved it. I lived for it. So when I was told like you're going to be this little monster in this movie, I was beside myself. I was so happy. So it was fun. So dream come true.
Do you remember when we had to pull the body of the woman who had been half-eaten at the top of the stairs and you saw her skull? We needed a physical body. Guess who that was? We rolled her up in that carpet and dragged her down the hall.
I have a question. How come that body was never reanimated? Because technically he was dead. That should have come back as a zombie.
Didn't you see the damage that was inflicted? Yeah, the head.
The brain.
I see worse than the Walking Dead guy.
Yes.
Thank you.
Were there parts of the movie that kind of evolved from the original script that may have not have been in there? And I'm especially wondering about the end. The ending is so brilliant. And I was just wondering if the end was scripted right from the beginning, or if there were other scenes that might have evolved as you were making.
The very original draft of the film, the Timmy / Karen character was supposed to live on. And we decided on the fly to do that, to have it end the way it did. The Johnny character, that was one of the scenes that evolved that seemed to make most sense, ironical sense, that since Barbara wanted Johnny, he's got the keys, we have to get to Johnny throughout the film, we decided to bring Johnny back at the end of the film, and that was one of those scenes that evolved as we were working on it. We also had the decision to make, because it was the first feature film that we had ever attempted, did we want to shoot a so-called happy ending? And in a very short period of time, we decided we cannot shoot a happy ending because then it won't be Night of the Living Dead. We never did shoot an alternative ending, simply because we didn't want a distributor to be able to say to us, well, this is too grim, let's end it another way, so we never allowed that option to happen.
Something I heard too, decades later, in a similar situation, the Q&A panel like this. George was also on the panel. I believe George told the story that the thought also involved that possibly Barbra would end up being the sole survivor. And there would be a nice close-up shot and a big tear coming down her face. But that too was kiboshed, which I couldn't picture Night of the Living Dead being anything but what it is, with everybody dead.
How do you feel, last question, how do you feel after all these years to have kickstarted almost or invented a genre of film, or now it's like a genre of film? Because like the European filmmakers kind of a couple of years later was influenced by Night of the Living Dead, and then there were all these dead zombie films from Europe, the Italians primarily. And then now we have The Walking Dead, which is so popular. And it's like all because of Night of the Living Dead. And so you three were involved in that. How does it feel? Do you ever think about that? It's like,
We are very powerful. We use that power. No, I can't take credit for, I would love to, but I can't take credit for anything. I was dragged along happily. So I was not one of the creators. I participated in the project, but it was not my project. So you guys are the ones who created that subgenre. And I think, you are the ones who deserve thanks for that.
When people come to say hello and we love the film, oftentimes I am told, how does it feel to have spawned all of the apocalypse that we see before us? It's difficult to get your head wrapped around it, for me at least. All I can say, as a very happy, excited young actress at 22 years old to have been given this part, my life has become, that's my legacy, really. Barbra is my legacy. I never would have dreamed it. It's one of the most exciting, wonderful things to feel that I have participated in something that all of you have made as big as it has become. It's really a teamwork between us. If I keep talking, I'll start crying. Thank you for that.
The experience is a bit surreal. I mean, it is impossible to imagine that something that you worked on 50 years ago made such an impression, and there's no false modesty involved. We simply wanted to do the best scary film that we could do. And so it was George Romero and John Russo wrote a good blueprint script to work from. But beyond that, it was a complete collaborative effort. Say, well, how about if we did this, or how about if we did that? And something that I think is important, and again, Night of the Living Dead would not be something that we could all be celebrating if we didn't get it finished. So anybody who has any aspirations to write a movie, to write a book, to write anything, any creative endeavor, painting, you have got to get it finished before anyone can appreciate it. If we had only done the first 15 days and never say, oh yeah, we have to get back to our movie one of these days, none of us would have Night of the Living Dead. So as a lesson to all of us, if you get it started, if you have that inspirational creative spark, see it through to the end. because you never, ever know what might happen once you share your ideas with other people.
That would be the end of our panel, and
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.